Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise and speak on this important debate today. I want to thank my colleague, the member from Vancouver East, for having introduced the motion, and I would indicate to you that I'll be sharing my time with the member from Manicouagan. Anyway, why are we here today? Well, we're here today as a result of a very serious situation that's resulted from a large supplier in this country, manufacturer and supplier of drugs, that has come up short and that has been unable to meet the demand. And there's no question that this is a crisis situation, but you know what, Mr. Speaker? This is not anything new. This has been going on now for at least 5 years. The government has been well aware of that. In fact, the Minister of Health finally responded to pressure from organizations in the healthcare sector, from provinces, from the opposition in August of 2011. She finally began to work with the industry and with associations across the country to come up with a solution. What did she come up with? She came up with a voluntary monitoring system, a system whereby companies like Santos were supposed to indicate voluntarily what the state was in terms of their ability to supply drugs to health authorities and to hospitals across this country. Well, the question is, how's that working so far? It's not working. That's the problem. And we're not just talking about there being a bit of a delay here. We're talking about this affecting thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Canadians that are receiving or are about to receive elective surgery, that will not get the kind of injectable drugs that they need, people receiving cancer treatment, people receiving treatment for epilepsy, people, transgendered people that are receiving treatment and that are injecting various drugs in order to make sure that their progress is ensured. These are people that are being affected as a result of this decision. Now, who is Santos and what is it they're doing? Well, you know, Santos supplies 90% of the injectable drugs to hospitals from one end of the country to the other. 90%. This is no little corner store, drugstore here. This is a serious company in this country that is providing medicines, drugs, pharmaceuticals to provinces from one end of the country to the other. The government says, well, we can't step in and use too strong a position with respect to this company because it's the provincial jurisdiction. We'd be stepping on their toes. But, Mr. Speaker, the government already has an important role to play with respect to drugs in terms of registering, reviewing them, monitoring them, making sure they're safe. Mind you, they're having some troubles with their ability to even do that. But they've been asked by many provinces, they've been asked by Canadian associations, whether that be the anesthesiologists, whether that be the pharmacists, whether that be Cancer Care Canada, they've been asked to step forward and to actually begin to deal with the problem by putting some teeth into their ability to monitor the supply of drugs to provinces and to hospitals across the country. The United States is doing it. The President of the United States recognized last year that there's a serious problem with drug shortages in that country, with the pharmaceutical companies not being able to meet the demand and not letting health authorities, hospitals know what the situation is and what their ability is in terms of their ability to meet the demand. You know, what's the supply going to be? Now, this government has said, well, the companies will tell us. The companies will tell us whether or not they're able to supply the drugs and what drugs they're going to be able to supply, and they'll voluntarily declare when they're having some trouble. Well, in this case, Santos were advised in November of 2011 that by the FDA, by the FDA in the U.S., that there was real problems with some of their facilities, and that they were going to have to that their production was going to be interrupted if they didn't bring some of those up to standard. One of them was the plant that did have production interrupted in Quebec. Now, did the government hear about that? Not a word. Did Canadians hear about that? Not a peep. Until late February of this year did we begin to get an indication that, in fact, there was going to be an interruption to the supply of drugs to hospitals, to jurisdictions across this country. So clearly, the government's own monitoring, their strategy for voluntarily asking, pretty please, the pharmaceutical companies to be able to make that information available has not worked. So what this resolution says, and what my colleagues on this side have said, one after the other, in incredibly articulate fashion, is that this government has to step forward and they have to take some responsibility. They have to recognize that the strategy that they've tried to put in place, or that they put in place, isn't working. And that Canadian safety and health is at risk as a result of their failure to act. And the point is simply this: work together with the provinces, work together with health jurisdictions across the country, and come up with one system, one national system to monitor the supply of drugs across the country. It's that simple, not complicated. We're not talking about them coming in like they've done with the heavy hand, like they're doing in the Air Canada dispute, and taking the side of the employer and putting the jackboot down on working people. We're not asking them to move in that type of an aggressive action. We're asking them to recognize that they are a partner in health care. The federal government, the provinces have a constitutional responsibility, joint responsibility, to ensure that Canadians receive a certain quality of health care in this country. This government continually wants to abdicate that responsibility. And that's a problem for us, Mr. Speaker. So we're simply asking in this debate, pointing out the flaws to the voluntary system, to the pretty please, Big Santos, tell us what's going on and we'll be okay. That's not working. The government has to stand up, start putting some teeth to these issues, and begin to deal with this question once and for all. It's not going to work. It's not going to work otherwise, and that's the issue. And if we don't deal with it, Canadians' health, Canadians' comfort, Canadians' ability to receive the treatment they need when they need it is jeopardized. And surely the government recognizes that that's a situation that needs to be avoided. So what members on this side are saying to the government is, work with the provinces. Work with the provinces. Recognize their jurisdiction. Recognize your jurisdiction. Take some responsibility and take some action in order to ensure that this kind of a situation doesn't happen again, and the Canadians that need, because of their health circumstances, that need pharmaceuticals, safe pharmaceuticals, when they need them, are going to receive them, Mr. Speaker, without going through these kinds of delays. I understand that my time is up, I want to thank you very much for allowing me to participate, and thank you and the Speaker of the House for allowing us to proceed with this important emergency debate at this particular point in time. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Member for Vancouver Centre.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable Member for his very eloquent speech, and I wanted to ask him a simple question. Let us for a moment accept the federal government's statement that it is not responsible for the well-being and the health of Canadians across this country. So, does the member think that at the very least the federal government should be responsible for the health and well-being for the people for whom it has direct responsibility, such as First Nations, Inuit, RCMP, the armed forces and veterans? And taking that responsibility seriously, does the member believe that the federal government should therefore set up a system similar to the one in the FDA in the United States, where it anticipates and it works with manufacturing companies to address and prevent and avert shortages before they occur?
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth, Cole Harbour.
Thank you, and I appreciate the question from the member from Vancouver Centre. There's no question that the federal government has direct responsibility constitutionally to certain identified groups. But what we've seen increasingly is that they've been devolving the responsibility. They've been shoving those folks, whether it be veterans or others, they've been shoving those on to the responsibility of the province. But I don't accept the fact that this federal government does not have some responsibility. And I got to tell you, I want to say to this government that if they're not prepared to step up and take their responsibility seriously, to clear those benches, and let's elect a government that will take its responsibility seriously.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Human Resources and Skills Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his comments. I actually want to make a comment with regard to the honourable member from Vancouver Centre said earlier that she was somewhat confused about where provincial territorial decisions are being made. It also seems a little bit like the NDP are slightly confused. You know, Mr. Speaker, happy to provide some direction on this. In fact, there is leadership being shown, and it's on this issue of supply issues. And although the provincial territorial areas are responsible for determining drug supply, they are responsible for determining what suppliers will be used in their jurisdiction. We are in a circumstance where we're working with industry, and we will help identify and help fast-track. That's our responsibility. But it is the responsibility of the provinces and the territories to work with suppliers to make sure that those patients that they know well in their jurisdictions are receiving the medications they need. We encourage them to do so. Like the member opposite's comments on that.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth, Cole Harbour.
Well, I think the only people that are concerned are the people on the government side, Mr. Speaker, on this issue. On this issue and many other issues. When it comes to standing up and fighting on behalf of Canadians, when it comes to solving problems that are facing Canadians, hundreds of thousands of Canadians today are having their health care affected as a result of this decision and as a result of a lack of action. So what members on this side are doing, what I've said is, this government's got to step up. This government's got to take some responsibility, work with its partners, work with the provinces, work with the hospitals, work with the healthcare association across this country, and get this problem solved once and for all. That's not that difficult to understand.
We have time for one last short question. The Honourable Member for Saint-Bruno, Saint-Hubert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his very interesting remarks. What concerns me the most is the safety of Canadian citizens. Now, when we know that under Canadian legislation, the government must oversee that, there's also the issue of accessibility to care, and by deduction then drugs. when we know that because of the current drug shortage, which is the most serious we've ever faced, when we take all of that into account, how is it that the Conservative government hasn't shown leadership, hasn't been proactive, despite warning signals that have come from various organizations?
The honourable member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour. A short response, please.
Well, thank you. The member is bang on. I mean, that's absolutely the case. That this is not a new problem. This problem has existed for several years now. The government's first step at trying to correct it under great pressure was a voluntary monitoring system. Well, how's that working? It's not. So they've got to go back to the drawing board, and what my colleagues have done tonight is they've laid out a whole host of solutions to solve this problem, and we're calling on the government to take action now, get this problem solved once and for all.